Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Janice Lo. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. Police identify Yuen Long chainsaw murder suspect. Beijing bans information infrastructure operators from doing business with American chip maker Micron. Police has identified the suspect of a brutal murder in which a woman was attacked with a chainsaw and a knife. Yuen Long Assistant Commander Taeyok Leun said a man who fled the city is wanted for the case. The superintendent did not say where he went, but revealed he is in his 40s and had disputes with the woman. No other details were provided, but reports suggest the man was the stepson of the 54-year-old victim, surnamed Lau. She was found lying in a pool of blood in a remote area east of Campton River on Saturday night. Police said her stomach and chest were stabbed multiple times, while there were cut wounds on her neck and wrists. Two government pandemic advisors have brushed off concerns over a recent uptick of COVID infections. But Lau Yulong, who's a pediatrician, admitted it was unusual to see an outbreak of respiratory diseases at school this time of the year. Macy Mock reports.
While the winter flu season typically ends in March or April, figures suggest otherwise this year. According to the Center for Health Protection, dozens of schools have reported an outbreak of upper respiratory tract infection in the past weeks. Most cases came from primary schools. Government pandemic advisor Lau Yulong believes school children were especially vulnerable this year, as they were protected by masks in the past 3 years and spent extended time away from the campus. But he admitted respiratory outbreaks in hot weather are rather unusual and suggested it could have been delayed by COVID. His comments came after Health Secretary Lo Chong-mao predicted up to 10,000 COVID infections every day under a recent resurgence. Lau insisted infections may fluctuate and there is no need to panic. People who are sick can do their part by wearing a mask and staying away from the office, he added. Fellow pandemic advisor Ivan Hong brushed off worries over an uptick of severe COVID cases and related deaths.
I don't think there's much concern. I don't think that will put a lot of stress on the health system. We expected the number of cases to plateau perhaps in 3 to 4 weeks. Then we expect the number of cases to drop.
Nearly 500 serious or fatal COVID cases have been recorded at public hospitals in the past 3 weeks. Maisie Mock, HKIBC.
Hong Kong Disneyland executives faced the music in the legislature today after ending another year in the red. But the government urged lawmakers not to judge the book by its cover, arguing the resort rakes in enormous economic benefits.
Hong Kong Disneyland finished in the red for the 8th year running, although losses slightly narrowed to $2.1 billion in the last fiscal year. Disney blamed the poor results on COVID, while the government, who is the park's majority shareholder, urged everyone to look beyond the numbers. Tourism Minister Kevin Yeung came to Disneyland's defense at a Legislative Council panel meeting this morning. It would be best if the park could break even or even turn in a profit. But we should also take into consideration the positive impact that the park has on our economy and arts development, he said. His argument is backed by figures. Since opening in 2005, the resort has brought in $116 billion, equivalent to 0.27% of the city's GDP. Managing Director Michael Moriarty said attendance has rebounded, even as the park is still operating 5 days a week.
Easter, we have seen Southeast Asia attendance back to 2019 levels. Many people from the Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand, and our penetration of those arrivals is even higher than 19. All we need is flight capacity to come back. During Labor Day, our mainland attendance was back to 2019 levels, especially from Guangdong.
While revenue jumped 31% to $2.2 billion in the year ending last September, costs also went up 16%. This was despite the park opening on only 190 days, 25 less than the previous year.
18年啊，你都追唔返呢條數。
In a sarcastic tone, lawmaker Michael Tian said the park may not break even after 100 years. Moriarty explained expenses shot up because of a low base of comparison in 2021, when the park saved more than $300 million through government subsidies and unpaid leave. Michael Lo called for more transparency, including revealing the salary packages and bonuses of the resort's executives. But Yeung rejected his request, saying he does not see a need to do that for now.
Inflation in Hong Kong has worsened for the second consecutive month. The Consumer Price Index rose 2.1% year-on-year in April. That was compared to a 1.7% rise in March and surpassed market expectations of a 2% jump. A government spokesman attributed the adjustment to property owners paying more rates after concessions were reduced. A hike in cigarette duty led to an 18% surge for prices of alcoholic drinks and tobacco. Authorities expect inflation to remain mild for the rest of the year. Overseas, Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis will serve a second term after delivering a crushing victory in national elections yesterday. But his party failed to reach the mark to avoid forming a coalition government, and a runoff vote is likely. McCarthy reports.
Basking in his moment of glory, Kyriakos Mitsotakis waved to his supporters after a landslide victory for his party. The conservative New Democracy Party, headed by the Prime Minister, garnered nearly 41% of the vote in parliamentary elections yesterday, surpassing expectations. But it missed the 45% threshold needed to form a single-party government under a new system which ensures a balance of representation in the 300-member House. New Democracy's main rival, the left-wing Syriza party, led by opposition leader Alexis Tsipras, was left in the dust after winning only 20% of ballots. Socialist Party PASOK came in third at 11%. With no clear winner and Mitsotakis showing no interest to form a coalition government, a runoff vote seems to be the most likely outcome. The governing party is confident of gaining a full majority in the second round of voting, in which the winning threshold to form a government will be reduced to 37%. The second vote could be held sometime next month. Analysts credited New Democracy's victory, the biggest since 1974, to Greece's successful economic recovery since Mitsotakis came to power in 2019. Sachin Katwi, HKIBC.
U.S. President Joe Biden has spoken to Republican leader Kevin McCarthy on the phone in a bid to break an impasse on the debt ceiling negotiations. The pair will now sit down to hash out an agreement which would avoid a default on government debt.
I think our discussion, my discussion with the president, I think was productive. What I'm looking at are where our differences are and how could we solve those. And I felt that part was productive. But look, there's no agreement. We're still apart. The agreement would be, let's get our teams back together so everybody clearly understands what we're talking about, what they're talking about. I think we can solve some of these problems if he understands what we're looking at. But I've been very clear to him from the very beginning. We have to spend less money than we spent last year.
Biden did not stop for questions as he returns to Washington after attending the G7 summit in Japan. Talks have been going on for some time, but little progress was made ahead of the May 31st deadline. Republicans are demanding that the government roll back spending to 2022 levels and not just a freeze on current top-line number. Before boarding his plane, Biden described the Republican proposals as unacceptable. Stocks for Chinese chip manufacturers soared today after Beijing imposed a partial ban on components made by American firm Micron. The Cyberspace Administration announced that Micron's products pose serious potential network security issues and must not be employed at critical information infrastructure. Micron, which derives more than 10% of revenue from the mainland, said it will continue to engage in discussions with Chinese authorities. The move is seen as another chapter of the Sino-US tech war and follows similar bans by Washington on Chinese telecom products. Shares of SMIC rose 1.2%, while Hua Hong Semiconductor was up nearly 1%. Macau casino operator Galaxy Entertainment registered robust growth after first quarter revenue jumped 72%. The firm reported earnings of $7.05 billion between January and March, compared with $4.1 billion for the same period last year. Profits more than doubled from the fourth quarter of 2022. Visitor numbers shot up after the gambling hub relaxed COVID restrictions in early January, in line with mainland China. The group will hire 900 local residents when a convention center and 2 new hotels come into operation. Now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng Index ended the day up 227 points. To the top 10 active stocks, Tracker Fund was up 24 cents, Tencent was up $7, while Alibaba was up $1.15. BYD Company was up $8.20, Ping An was up 20 cents, while AIA was up $1.05. To the foreign exchange against the Hong Kong dollar, the euro is at 8.47. The pound's at 9.75 and the Canadian dollar is at 5.79. Over in Europe, the FTSE 100 is currently up 2 points. On to the weather now. Expect heavy showers with squally thunderstorms tomorrow morning. Temperatures will range between 24 and 29 degrees. Sunny periods will return on Thursday. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Monday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Janice Lo. Thanks for watching. Good night.